In the quiet town of Oak Ridge, a once foreboding relic of the past is given a second chance at life. The St. Mary Asylum, a dilapidated and infamous institution that had long been shuttered due to its dark history of abuse and unethical practices, is now being transformed into a high-end condominium complex. The grand project is spearheaded by Ethan Carter, a 30-year-old ambitious contractor, and Laura Collins, a talented interior designer with a flair for modern elegance. The transformation is extensive. The crumbling walls of the asylum are replaced with sleek, contemporary finishes. Once imposing iron gates are now replaced by polished glass doors. The sinister aura of the building is meticulously erased with fresh coats of paint and luxurious fixtures. The old, foreboding hallways are now adorned with plush carpeting and tasteful art. The grand reopening is marked with a lavish ceremony, and the first residents begin to move in. Among them are John and Emily Thompson, a middle-aged couple looking to start anew in their upscale apartment, and Sarah Jenkins, a 25-year-old ambitious young professional eager to make a fresh start in a vibrant community. John, a retired police officer, and Emily, a former school teacher, are initially thrilled by the luxurious accommodations. They are charmed by the building's new look, with its high ceilings and expansive windows offering a view of the scenic Oak Ridge landscape. They are eager to leave behind the stress of their previous lives and immerse themselves in their new surroundings. Sarah, new to Oak Ridge and seeking solace after a recent breakup, is equally excited. Her apartment is a modern oasis, with minimalist decor and a high-tech security system. She sees this move as an opportunity to focus on her career and personal growth. As the residents settle in, a sense of unease begins to creep in. John is the first to notice it. Late at night, when the building is quiet and still, he hears faint whispers echoing through the hallways. At first, he dismisses them as the result of an overactive imagination or the remnants of construction noise. However, the whispers persist, growing louder and more insistent, though he never sees anyone around. Emily starts experiencing unsettling dreams that seem too vivid to be mere nightmares. In these dreams, she hears cries for help and sees shadowy figures wandering through darkened hallways. She wakes up feeling anxious and disturbed, but she tries to reassure herself that these are just manifestations of stress. Sarah, too, is not immune to the building's strange atmosphere. While working late into the night, she sees shadows darting across the corners of her vision and hears the faint echo of footsteps when she's alone. The building's high-tech security system, meant to provide reassurance, starts malfunctioning sporadically, adding to her discomfort. Despite their mounting discomfort, Ethan and Laura, who are deeply invested in the success of the project, insist that the building's history is entirely behind them. They are determined to prove that the St. Mary Asylum has been completely reborn as a modern sanctuary, free from any remnants of its grim past. They chalk up the residents' experiences to the stress of moving into a new place and the adjustment to their new surroundings. As the days go by, the eerie incidents continue, subtly undermining the residents' sense of security. The building, once a symbol of hope and renewal, now begins to cast long shadows of doubt and fear. The stage is set for a confrontation with the dark legacy of the St. Mary Asylum, a legacy that refuses to stay buried. As the initial excitement of moving into their new homes begins to fade, the residents of the luxurious St. Mary condominiums find themselves grappling with unsettling experiences that challenge their sense of normalcy. The once gleaming building now seems to harbor an undercurrent of dread that grows more palpable with each passing day. John Thompson, previously the most skeptical of the group, finds his once excited outlook increasingly clouded by strange occurrences. One evening, as he's winding down in his living room, he hears the unmistakable sound of footsteps echoing through the hallway outside his apartment. At first, he assumes it's a late-night neighbor or construction crew finishing up some final touches. But when he opens his door, he finds the corridor eerily empty. The sound has stopped, and the silence feels oppressive. John shakes off the feeling, attributing it to the building's old construction settling or his own imagination. Emily Thompson's distress grows as her dreams become increasingly vivid and disturbing. She begins to experience episodes where she wakes up in the middle of the night, drenched in sweat, heart racing. In these dreams, She sees ghostly figures wandering through darkened corridors and hears anguished cries for help that seem to resonate with a palpable sorrow. Despite her attempts to dismiss these as the product of stress, Emily finds herself unable to shake the feeling that something is deeply wrong. Sarah Jenkins, who initially dismissed the odd occurrences as minor annoyances, starts to experience her own set of unsettling events. While working late in her apartment, she notices that her state-of-the-art security system occasionally glitches, displaying strange static patterns or turning on and off by itself. One night, as she's preparing to leave for bed, she hears a soft, melodic humming that seems to come from nowhere. The sound, almost soothing at first, quickly becomes unsettling as it grows louder and more discordant. She searches her apartment, but finds no source for the noise. The sense of being watched grows stronger, and Sarah begins to feel as though she's not alone even when she clearly is. The tension among the residents begins to build. John's irritation with the inexplicable noises leads to frequent arguments with Emily, who is increasingly troubled by her nightmarish visions. The once happy couple begins to experience friction in their relationship, with John dismissing Emily's fears as baseless and Emily feeling unsupported and alone. Sarah, in turn, becomes more reclusive. She avoids leaving her apartment unless absolutely necessary and spends her time researching the history of the building, hoping to find some rational explanation for the strange happenings. She discovers snippets of information about the asylum's grim past, but finds little concrete detail. The lack of information only deepens her unease. As the unsettling phenomena continue, Ethan Carter and Laura Collins, who had been so confident in the project's success, start to take notice of the residents' growing discomfort. They attribute the issues to the stress of moving and the building's adjustments settling in. To address the complaints, Ethan arranges for an additional round of inspections and reassures the residents that everything is functioning as it should. However, despite their reassurances, the residents' experiences persist, and the once hopeful excitement surrounding the St. Mary condominiums begins to wane. The luxurious veneer of the building seems to be cracking, revealing a darker undercurrent that refuses to be ignored. The unsettling occurrences hint at a deeper, more sinister presence that is far from being resolved, setting the stage for a deeper confrontation with the shadows of the past. As the days pass and the sense of dread deepens among the residents of the St. Mary condominiums, Emily Thompson's unease drives her to investigate the building's dark past further. Her disturbing dreams have left her with an insatiable curiosity about what might be causing these haunting experiences. Determined to uncover the truth, she begins to delve into the historical records of the asylum, hoping to find some answers. One evening, after a particularly distressing dream where she was trapped in a room filled with anguished faces, Emily decides to take matters into her own hands. She visits the local library and spends hours poring over old newspapers and archived documents. Her research reveals snippets of the asylum's past, but most of the information is fragmented and vague. The deeper she digs, the more she uncovers unsettling facts about the institution's history. Emily discovers that the St. Mary Asylum was notorious for its harsh treatment of patients. The asylum was known for its extreme and inhumane methods, including experimental procedures on those with severe mental illnesses. Some reports mention that patients were subjected to crude and painful treatments in a section of the building that was kept hidden from public view. The more Emily reads, the more she realizes that the asylum's closing was shrouded in mystery, with allegations of abuse and unexplained deaths driving the decision to shut it down. Among the documents, Emily finds a reference to a specific part of the building that was kept sealed and off-limits to both staff and patients. This section was referred to as the restricted wing in the records. The descriptions of the wing are chilling. Patients who were sent there were never seen again, and the records are marked with terms like unfit for further observation and highly classified. Feeling a growing sense of dread, Emily decides to confront Laura Collins about what she has found. Laura, who had been reluctant to revisit the building's past, listens with growing concern. She explains that while she had been aware of some of the asylum's troubling history, she had hoped that a complete renovation would erase the past's influence. Laura admits that she had stumbled upon some old documents herself, but had chosen to ignore them, fearing that bringing up the past would only exacerbate the situation. Together, Emily and Laura decide to visit the site of the restricted wing. Laura uses her access to the building's construction blueprints to locate the area described in the records. As they make their way through the labyrinthine hallways of the building, their path leads them to a set of heavy, reinforced doors that have remained sealed since the renovation began. With a combination of determination and trepidation, Emily and Laura manage to gain access to the restricted area. They find themselves in a dark, oppressive space filled with old, rusty medical equipment and faded, grimy walls. The air is thick with dust, and the silence is almost deafening. As they explore the area, they come across disturbing remnants of the past. Old patient restraints, broken surgical instruments, and faded charts documenting the cruel experiments performed here. In the corner of one room, Emily finds a collection of old journals and records. The journals, written by various staff members of the asylum, provide a haunting glimpse into the inhumane practices carried out within these walls. The entries describe patients being subjected to painful procedures, isolation, and psychological torment. One entry, in particular, stands out, a desperate account of a staff member who describes a growing sense of dread and a series of unexplained phenomena occurring in the wing. As Emily and Laura piece together the horrifying details, they realize that the spirits of those who suffered in this restricted area may still be trapped within the building. The disturbing phenomena experienced by the residents, whispers, shadows, and inexplicable noises, could be manifestations of the anguish and torment endured by the asylum's former patients. This revelation leaves both women shaken. Laura, who had hoped to leave the past behind, is now confronted with the grim reality that the building's history is far from erased. Emily is left grappling with the knowledge that the place she now calls home is haunted by the spirits of those who were mistreated and left to suffer in silence. Determined to understand the full extent of the malevolent presence that seems to be influencing the building, Emily and Laura realize that they must confront the past and find a way to put the restless spirits to peace. Their investigation has only just begun, and the unsettling truth of what lies within the St. Mary condominiums is beginning to unfold. Emily and Laura's unsettling discovery about the St. Mary Asylum's restricted wing leaves them determined to unravel the full extent of the building's dark history. With the knowledge of the cruel experiments and the lingering spirits, they set out to uncover more about the asylum's past in hopes of finding a way to help the trapped souls and restore some semblance of peace to the building. Their next step is to delve into the asylum's staff records and personal accounts, hoping to find more information about the individuals involved in the inhumane practices. They visit the local historical society, where they dig through archived records and personal files related to the asylum. It's there that they come across a series of letters and personal diaries belonging to Dr. Charles Whitmore, one of the asylum's chief physicians during its most notorious years. Dr. Whitmore's journals provide chilling insights into the man behind the cruel practices. His writings reveal a man who was initially idealistic about his work, but gradually became obsessed with the idea of curing mental illness through increasingly barbaric methods. The entries describe experiments involving electroshock therapy, lobotomies, and isolation techniques that were not only ineffective but torturous. Whitmore's final entries take a darker turn, suggesting that he believed he was conducting necessary evils and that the patients who suffered were part of a grander experiment. His writings are laced with a disturbing sense of rationalization for the inhumanity he inflicted. Emily and Laura are horrified by the details, but the journals also provide a clue that might explain some of the recent disturbances. One entry mentions a ritualistic sealing of the restricted wing, indicating that the area was locked away not just to contain physical objects, but to suppress something more malevolent. The entry cryptically refers to a pact made to ensure the spirits would remain confined within the building, suggesting that the suffering inflicted might have led to the creation of a powerful and malevolent presence. Determined to further investigate the nature of this pact, Emily and Laura return to the asylum to examine the restricted wing more closely. They bring along a medium named Rebecca Miller, who is known in Oak Ridge for her ability to communicate with spirits. Rebecca agrees to help, intrigued by the history and the potential of a powerful, restless presence. As they enter the restricted wing with Rebecca, the atmosphere becomes increasingly oppressive. The air feels colder, and an unnatural silence settles around them. Rebecca sets up her equipment and begins to conduct a seance to connect with the spirits trapped within the asylum. As she channels the spirits, a series of disturbing revelations unfold. The spirits that communicate through Rebecca are tormented and vengeful. They speak of being subjected to unimaginable pain and suffering, and they express a deep desire for revenge against those who wronged them. Some spirits describe being subjected to horrifying experiments, while others recount the isolation and neglect they endured. The frustration and anger of these spirits are palpable, and Rebecca struggles to keep control as the spirit's energy intensifies. One spirit, who identifies herself as Eleanor, a former patient, provides critical information. She describes a ritual performed by Dr. Whitmore and his colleagues to bind the spirits to the asylum. The ritual was intended to harness the negative energy and suffering to create a protective barrier, but it had the unintended effect of trapping the spirits in a state of torment. Eleanor reveals that the spirits were never given proper release and remained trapped in a cycle of pain. Emily and Laura are left shaken by the revelation. The spirits' anger and desperation are palpable, and they realize that the building's disturbances are the result of this unresolved suffering. The pact made by Dr. Whitmore and his colleagues to confine the spirits has led to a powerful, lingering malevolence that now haunts the condos. Rebecca, though exhausted, advises Emily and Laura that the only way to break the cycle is to perform a ritual of release to free the spirits from their torment. The ritual requires specific rites and items to appease the spirits and lift the binding curse placed upon them. Emily and Laura, though frightened, feel a sense of responsibility to help the trapped souls find peace. The task ahead is daunting, and the danger is palpable. They are now acutely aware that the shadows of the past are not merely echoes. They are active, vengeful entities that have been waiting for their chance to break free. As Emily and Laura prepare for the ritual, they know that the final confrontation with the asylum's dark legacy is imminent. The sense of dread among the residents intensifies, and the stage is set for a dramatic and terrifying resolution. The discovery of Dr. Whitmore's ritual and the spirit's torment leaves Emily and Laura in a state of dread and urgency. They know that time is running out. The more they uncover about the asylum's dark past, the more the malevolent presence within the building seems to grow stronger. Strange occurrences intensify, and the once luxurious St. Mary condominiums become a house of horrors. As the night of the ritual approaches, the atmosphere in the building becomes increasingly oppressive. Residents report seeing figures standing at the end of dimly lit hallways, hearing disembodied voices calling their names, and feeling an inexplicable coldness that seeps into their very bones. Even the most skeptical among them begin to feel the weight of something sinister lurking in the shadows. Emily and Laura, now fully aware of the dangers, start gathering the necessary items for the ritual. They consult with Rebecca, who provides them with a detailed list of what they will need to perform the ceremony to release the spirits. The list includes rare herbs, a candle made from beeswax, a specific type of crystal, and a book of ancient incantations that Rebecca insists is crucial to the success of the ritual. As they gather the materials, the building itself seems to resist their efforts. Doors that were once easy to open now require considerable force, lights flicker and die out, and the temperature continues to drop to unnatural levels. Emily begins to experience vivid and disturbing visions. She sees flashes of the asylum as it once was, patients screaming in agony, doctors with cold, detached expressions, and shadowy figures watching her from the corners of the rooms. Laura, who has always been the more grounded of the two, starts to question her own sanity. She hears the incessant whispers of the spirits growing louder and more insistent, filling her mind with terrifying images of the suffering that occurred within the walls of the asylum. The stress of the situation takes a toll on both women, and their once solid resolve begins to falter. The other residents of the building are not spared from the growing terror. Some begin to leave the building, unable to cope with the increasing paranormal activity. Those who remain are either too stubborn to leave or simply have nowhere else to go. They huddle in their apartments, lights on and doors locked, praying for the night to pass without incident. The building, once a symbol of luxury and comfort, has become a prison of fear. The night before the ritual, Emily has a particularly vivid nightmare. In the dream, she is back in the asylum's restricted wing, surrounded by the tortured spirits of the former patients. They reach out to her, their faces twisted in agony, pleading for release. She feels their pain, their anger, and their overwhelming desire for revenge. One spirit, a woman with hollow eyes and a voice like broken glass, tells Emily that if the ritual fails, the spirits will not just remain trapped. They will lash out with a fury that will consume everyone in the building. When Emily awakens, drenched in cold sweat, she knows that there can be no turning back. The ritual must be performed, and it must succeed. She shares her dream with Laura and Rebecca, and the three women prepare themselves for the most dangerous night of their lives. The ritual is set to take place at midnight, the hour when the veil between the living and the dead is at its thinnest. As the time approaches, the building seems to come alive with a malevolent energy. The walls groan as if under immense pressure, and the very air seems to pulse with a dark, oppressive force. The spirits, sensing what is about to happen, begin to manifest more openly. Shadowy figures glide silently through the hallways, and the disembodied voices rise to a deafening chorus of wails and screams. Emily, Laura, and Rebecca gather in the restricted wing, where the ritual will take place. The room is filled with the relics of the past, rusty medical instruments, broken furniture, and the lingering scent of decay. Rebecca sets up the ritual items in a precise formation, explaining to Emily and Laura that each element must be placed correctly for the ritual to succeed. There can be no mistakes. As the clock strikes midnight, Rebecca begins to chant the incantations from the ancient book, her voice steady but strained. Emily and Laura join in, their voices trembling with fear but resolute in their determination. The air grows colder still, and the room darkens as if the light itself is being sucked out by the malevolent force that surrounds them. The spirits begin to manifest more intensely, their anguished faces appearing in the flickering candlelight. They circle around the three women, their expressions shifting between desperation and rage. The ritual seems to be working. The spirits are being drawn to the center of the room, where the crystal glows with an eerie, unnatural light. But then, just as the ritual reaches its climax, something goes wrong. The candle suddenly extinguishes, plunging the room into darkness. The spirits, instead of being calmed, become enraged. They lash out at the women, their wails turning into screams of fury. The ground beneath them shakes, and the walls seem to close in as the spirit's energy threatens to overwhelm the ritual. Emily feels a cold hand grasp her arm, pulling her into the swirling darkness. She hears Laura scream, but the sound is distant, as if coming from another world. In that moment, Emily realizes that the ritual is not just about releasing the spirits, it's about facing the full force of their wrath. Rebecca's voice rises above the chaos, chanting the final lines of the incantation with all her strength. The crystal in the center of the room pulses with light, growing brighter and brighter until it fills the room with a blinding glow. The spirits, caught in the light, let out one final, ear-piercing scream before they are drawn into the crystal, their forms dissolving into nothingness. When the light fades, the room is silent. Emily, Laura, and Rebecca are left standing in the aftermath, shaken and exhausted but alive. The spirits are gone, their presence no longer haunting the building. The ritual, though nearly derailed, has succeeded. But as the women catch their breath, they realize that the building is forever changed. The walls, once oppressive and cold, now feel empty and desolate, as if the very soul of the place has been ripped away. The sense of relief is tinged with an unsettling feeling that something has been lost, something that can never be reclaimed. Emily and Laura know that their battle with the past is over, but the scars it has left behind will remain with them forever. The building, once a symbol of hope and renewal, is now a monument to the horrors that were once hidden within its walls. In the days following the ritual, the atmosphere within St. Mary condominiums is eerily calm, but the residents are far from at ease. Emily and Laura, though relieved that the immediate threat of the spirits has been vanquished, begin to realize that the battle they fought has left deeper, more insidious wounds on the building and on themselves. The first sign that something is still terribly wrong comes when the remaining residents start reporting vivid nightmares. These dreams aren't just fleeting moments of fear, but prolonged episodes where they feel trapped in the past, reliving the horrors of the asylum's darkest days. People wake up screaming, drenched in sweat, and some are even too terrified to sleep at all. Emily herself is plagued by these visions, seeing herself in the shoes of the asylum's former patients, subjected to the same cruel treatments and torments. The nightmares are just the beginning. The building, which had once seemed to return to a semblance of normalcy, begins to show signs of decay. Walls that were pristine after the renovations now crack and peel, revealing the old, mold-stained bricks beneath. Electrical systems fail at random, plunging entire sections of the building into darkness for hours at a time. The elevators, once state-of-the-art, begin to malfunction, stopping between floors or taking residents to the wrong level, a level that shouldn't exist. One evening, as Emily and Laura are discussing their next steps, the temperature in Emily's apartment suddenly drops, and the lights flicker before going out completely. In the darkness, they hear a low, guttural whisper, one that seems to echo from the very walls of the building. The voice speaks Emily's name, dragging it out in a slow, deliberate drawl that sends chills down her spine. Laura, usually composed, looks pale and frightened, her eyes wide with fear. They realize with a sinking dread that the spirits may have been banished, but the malevolent energy they once fed on still lingers, now infused into the very fabric of the building. Determined to uncover the source of this lingering darkness, Emily and Laura dive deeper into the history of the asylum, hoping to find clues they might have missed. They discover that Dr. Whitmore, the doctor who had orchestrated the torturous experiments on the patients, had not acted alone. He had been part of a secret society, one that believed in harnessing the suffering of others to gain power and extend their own lives. This society had been performing rituals long before the asylum was built, and it was their dark energy that had been woven into the foundation of the building itself. The asylum, and now the condominiums, were merely vessels for something much older and far more dangerous. As they dig deeper, Emily starts to notice that her own reflection seems different. When she looks into the mirror, she sees her eyes staring back at her, but with a coldness that she doesn't recognize. At night, she hears whispers not just in her dreams, but in the quiet moments before sleep, when the world is silent and still. These whispers aren't just remnants of the spirits, they're commands, dark suggestions that urge her to do things she would never consider. Laura, too, begins to change. She grows distant, her usually sharp mind dulled by an overwhelming sense of dread. She no longer seems like herself, as if something is slowly eroding her will from within. The other residents, those who haven't fled in terror, become increasingly paranoid. They avoid each other in the hallways, speak in hushed tones, and always seem to be looking over their shoulders. The once vibrant community that St. Mary condominiums promised has been reduced to a fractured group of individuals, each haunted by their own fears and the oppressive weight of the building's dark history. Then, the disappearances begin. First, it's just one resident, a reclusive man on the top floor whom no one really knew. He's gone, his apartment left untouched, as if he simply vanished into thin air. Then another resident disappears, this time a young woman who had been vocal about the strange happenings in the building. The police are called, but they find nothing. No signs of struggle, no evidence of foul play. It's as if the building itself swallowed them whole. Emily and Laura know that whatever is happening, it's connected to the ritual they performed. The malevolent energy they disturbed has been awakened, and it's growing stronger, feeding on the fear and despair of the remaining residents. They begin to piece together the final, horrifying truth. The ritual they performed didn't banish the spirits. It merely transferred their power into the building itself. The asylum was no longer haunted by ghosts. It had become the ghost. Realizing the danger they are in, Emily and Laura decide they must leave St. Mary condominiums before it's too late. But the building has other plans. As they pack their things and make for the exit, they find the doors locked, the windows unbreakable, and the very walls shifting to block their escape. The building is alive, and it intends to keep them, and anyone else who enters, trapped within its dark embrace. As they frantically search for a way out, Emily comes across a final entry in Dr. Whitmore's journal. It describes how, in the event of the spirits being disturbed, The only way to appease the malevolent force would be to perform a sacrificial ritual, one that requires the blood of the living. Emily realizes with horror that this is why the building allowed them to perform the original ritual. It needed to grow stronger, and now it requires the ultimate offering. Trapped in a living nightmare, Emily and Laura face an impossible choice. Attempt to perform another ritual, knowing it will likely cost them their lives, or try to survive long enough for the building to find new victims. As the shadows close in and the walls seem to pulse with malevolent energy, they realize that either way, they are running out of time. The walls of St. Mary condominiums seem to close in on Emily and Laura as they grasp the full extent of their peril. Every corner of the building exudes a malevolent force, and they feel the weight of countless eyes watching their every move. The air grows thick with a stifling dread, making it difficult to breathe, as if the building itself is trying to suffocate them. Sleep becomes impossible as the constant whispers and shifting shadows keep them on edge, and their bodies and minds are pushed to the brink of collapse. The remaining residents are no longer themselves. They wander the halls like the living dead, eyes hollow, faces gaunt, speaking to unseen entities in hushed, frantic whispers. Some sit in dark corners, muttering to themselves, while others scratch at the walls as if trying to dig their way out of this hellish prison. Emily and Laura see them in passing, but their gazes are empty, devoid of recognition or hope. It's as if the building has drained them of their humanity, leaving only husks behind. In their increasingly frantic search for escape, Emily and Laura discover that the building's layout is changing. Hallways that once led to familiar places now stretch endlessly into darkness, twisting and turning in impossible directions. Doors open into rooms that shouldn't exist, rooms filled with outdated medical equipment, rusted gurneys, and blood-stained walls, remnants of the asylum's dark past. They find themselves in places they don't remember entering, as if the building is toying with them, leading them deeper into its labyrinthine heart. One night, as they huddle together in Emily's apartment, they hear the sound of something scraping against the walls outside. It starts as a faint, almost imperceptible noise, but soon grows louder, more insistent. The sound is wet and dragging, like something heavy being pulled across the floor. Then comes the smell, thick, metallic, and rancid. It seeps through the cracks in the walls and under the door, filling the room with a nauseating stench that makes them gag. They know that whatever is outside their door is not human. Suddenly, the lights flicker and go out, plunging them into darkness. Emily fumbles for a flashlight, her hands trembling, while Laura presses her ear against the door, listening intently. The scraping sound is closer now, right outside, followed by a slow, deliberate knock that reverberates through the wood. It's not a knock asking for entry, it's a warning, a signal that whatever is on the other side is aware of them, and it's waiting. Terrified, they retreat to the farthest corner of the room, clutching each other for comfort as the knocking continues. The door shudders with each impact, the wood creaking under the force. The whispers return, louder now, echoing inside their heads, growing more intense until they feel like their skulls will split open. The voices chant in a language they don't understand, but the tone is unmistakably malevolent, filled with an ancient rage that chills them to the bone. Then, just as abruptly as it started, the knocking stops and the whispers fade into a heavy, oppressive silence. The door remains intact, but they know that this reprieve is only temporary. The building is playing with them, testing their limits, and it's only a matter of time before it strikes again. Desperation drives them back into the twisting hallways, but no matter which path they take, they always end up back where they started. The building is reshaping itself around them, trapping them in an endless loop of horror. Every turn brings new horrors, apparitions of the former patients, their tortured faces frozen in eternal agony, reaching out to them with skeletal hands. The spirits are not at peace. They are vengeful, angry that their suffering has been unleashed upon the world once more. Emily starts to lose her grip on reality. She sees Laura talking to herself, having conversations with invisible figures, and responding to voices that only she can hear. Emily tries to snap her out of it, but Laura is slipping away, her mind fraying under the relentless pressure. There are moments when Laura doesn't even recognize Emily, looking at her with suspicion and fear, as if she's just another ghost haunting the halls. As days blur into nights, Emily begins to doubt her own sanity. She catches glimpses of herself in the distorted reflections of the windows and mirrors, but the figure staring back at her isn't quite right. It's her face, but twisted in a grotesque mockery, with eyes too large and a smile too wide. The reflection whispers to her, its mouth moving in sync with the voices in her head, urging her to give in, to accept her fate and become one with the building. Laura's condition deteriorates rapidly. She's no longer the strong, determined woman she once was. Now, she's a shadow of her former self, broken and terrified. She starts to believe that the only way to escape is through death, that they must offer themselves to the building, just as Dr. Whitmore and his society did with the patients. Emily is horrified by this idea, but the building's influence is strong, and she feels her resolve weakening. In a final, desperate attempt to break free, Emily suggests they try to recreate the original ritual, hoping that it might reverse the curse and destroy the evil at the heart of the building. But the ritual requires blood, human blood, and they both know what that means. They argue, voices rising in fear and frustration, as the building seems to mock their efforts, its walls pulsating with dark energy, as if it's feeding off their despair. As they prepare for the ritual, gathering the necessary items from the shadowy corners of the building, they are haunted by the spirits of the asylum's victims. The ghosts are no longer just apparitions. They are physical, tangible. They're cold, decaying hands brushing against Emily's skin, leaving behind a numb, deathly chill. The building's grip on reality continues to warp, and the boundaries between life and death blur even further. With time running out and the building closing in on them, Emily and Laura face the horrifying reality that their chances of survival are slim. The building, now fully awakened, is more than just haunted. It is an entity unto itself, a living, breathing force of malevolence that demands sacrifice. As the final part of the ritual begins, Emily must confront the terrifying truth. To escape, she may have to become the very thing she fears the most. The air in the room grows colder as Emily and Laura prepare for the final ritual, their trembling hands clutching the ancient tools they've gathered from the building's hidden recesses. The atmosphere is thick with dread, the shadows on the walls dancing in time with the flickering candlelight, as if the building itself is watching, waiting for what comes next. Every sound is amplified, the creak of the floorboards beneath their feet, the distant echo of a door slamming somewhere deep within the complex, the whispering voices that have become a constant companion. But tonight, the voices are louder, more insistent, as if urging them on, promising release in the darkness that lies ahead. Emily's mind races as she reviews the ritual steps, each one more horrific than the last. The instructions are written in a language she can barely comprehend, the twisted letters on the old parchment almost writhing as she reads them aloud. She knows that what they are about to do is wrong on every level, against nature, against humanity. But the desperation for escape outweighs her moral compass. She glances at Laura, who is barely holding on to her sanity, her eyes wide and unseeing, her body trembling with fear. The once vibrant and determined woman has been reduced to a shell, and Emily knows that time is running out for both of them. The first part of the ritual requires a drop of their blood, a small offering to the spirits that inhabit the building. Emily watches as Laura shakily drags the blade across her palm, wincing as the blood wells up and drips onto the old, faded floorboards. Emily follows suit, biting back the pain as she slices her own hand, the warm blood pooling in her cupped palm before she lets it fall. The droplets sizzle as they hit the floor, a dark, acrid smoke rising as if the very essence of the building is absorbing their life force. As they continue with the ritual, chanting the ancient incantations, the building begins to respond. The walls seem to pulse with a dark energy, the lights flicker ominously, and the shadows grow darker, more oppressive. The voices that have haunted them for so long rise to a deafening crescendo, a cacophony of screams and wails that reverberate through their very bones. The air becomes thick with the stench of decay, as if the building is exhaling its foul breath, and the temperature drops to an unbearable chill. Suddenly, The room is plunged into darkness as the candles are snuffed out, one by one, by an unseen force. Emily's heart pounds in her chest, the adrenaline coursing through her veins as she fumbles to relight them. But no matter how many times she strikes the match, the flame refuses to catch. The shadows have taken on a life of their own, swirling around them, closing in, suffocating them in the darkness. Emily can feel something moving in the blackness, something cold and ancient, brushing against her skin with fingers that feel like ice. Laura begins to scream, a blood-curdling sound that echoes through the room as the entity that has been tormenting them finally reveals itself. It emerges from the shadows, a grotesque figure shrouded in darkness, its form twisted and unnatural, as if it doesn't quite belong in this world. Its face is a horrific amalgamation of the patients who suffered and died in the asylum, their tormented expressions frozen in an eternal grimace of pain. The entity's eyes are empty voids, blacker than the deepest night, and as it stares at them, Emily feels her soul being pulled into that abyss. The final part of the ritual is the sacrifice. A life must be given to complete the process and appease the spirits. But Emily realizes too late that the entity was never going to let them leave. It was never about releasing the spirits or ending the curse. The ritual was a trap, a way to ensure that the building would continue to feed, to consume the living and bind their souls to its walls forever. With a sickening realization, Emily understands that she and Laura are the sacrifice. There is no escape, no salvation. The entity's outstretched hands reach for them, its touch freezing the blood in their veins as it begins to absorb their very essence. Laura's screams fade to a gurgling whimper as she is pulled into the darkness, her body convulsing before going limp, her soul ripped from her flesh. Emily tries to fight, to resist, but the entity's power is too great. It invades her mind, filling it with the tortured memories of the asylum's victims, their pain and suffering coursing through her like a poison. The walls of the room begin to close in, warping and twisting, the boundaries between reality and nightmare dissolving until Emily can no longer tell where one ends and the other begins. She feels herself slipping away, her consciousness merging with the countless souls trapped within the building, their collective agony becoming her own. In her final moments, Emily sees a vision of the building as it truly is, a monstrous, living entity that feeds on fear, pain, and despair. The luxury condominiums are merely a facade, a lure to draw in new victims. The building's true form is a labyrinth of twisted corridors and endless rooms filled with the echoes of the damned, where time has no meaning and escape is impossible. As she is pulled into the darkness, becoming one with the building's malevolent spirit, Emily's last thought is a desperate plea for release, but there is none. Only the cold, endless void of the building's hunger remains. And so, the cycle continues. The building waits, silent and patient, for the next unsuspecting soul to walk through its doors, to become part of its ever-growing collection. The St. Mary condominiums stand as a monument to horror, a place where the living and the dead are forever entwined in a dance of madness, suffering, and despair.